Welcome, Delta Traders. Today we're going to be talking about candlestick basics. When we hear the term price action, we automatically think candlesticks because candlesticks best reflect the price and what's going on in the market. A candlestick has three parts. It has a real body, an upper shadow, and a lower shadow. Sometimes the real body is just called the body. Sometimes the shadows are called wicks. These terms are interchangeable. The color of the candlestick indicates the difference between its opening price and the closing price. A lot of times you'll see bullish or up candlesticks indicated by a white body, while the bear candlestick or the down candlestick is indicated by a black body. Many times up candlesticks are green while down candlesticks are red. On my charts, and in this particular example, I use a green candlestick to represent a uptrend and a blue candlestick to represent a down closing price. The body of the candlestick tells you what the opening price is and what the closing price is. If you have a up candlestick, which in this case again is green, the opening price is the base of the real body and the closing price is represented by the top of the real body. If you have a down candlestick or a bear candlestick, the opening price is the top of the body and the closing price is the base of the body. So it's real simple. You simply look at the candlestick and whatever's colored in, you know that one end is the opening price and the other end is the closing price. Above and below the real body are the upper shadow and the lower shadow. The upper shadow represents how high the price got during that particular time frame. The lower shadow or lower wick represents how low the price got. So the very tip of the candlestick is the very highest price that it traded in that particular time frame, and the very tip of the lower shadow is what it traded at in terms of the lowest price. One complete candlestick represents one complete time frame. So if the candlestick represented a day's price, then one candlestick, the bottom of the candlestick, if it was a bull candlestick, would be the opening price and the top would be the closing price for that day. Oftentimes we have what we call intraday candlesticks, which represents various time frames during the day. For example, you might have a 5-minute candlestick. That means each candlestick represents 5 minutes of trading. Now, candlesticks don't only have to be representing time, they can also represent a series of events. For example, you might have a 320 tick candlestick, and that candlestick would represent what happened during 320 ticks of trading. So the first tick of trading, whatever price it was trading at, that's your opening price, and the last tick, whatever it traded at, that's your closing price. That would be your 320th tick. So if we're trading, say, a 1-hour candlestick, at the beginning of the hour, you have an opening price. At the end of the hour, the very last second of the hour, whatever it was trading at, that is your closing price. So one candlestick represents one time frame. And to recap, a candlestick has the three parts: the body, which shows opening close, the upper and lower shadows, which show the highest price and the lowest price it traded at, and then the color will describe which direction the opening was in relationship to the closing, and then the candlestick itself represents a complete time frame. Here's a chart that shows you a few candlesticks. Candlesticks will take on various shapes. In this particular chart, these are 5-minute candlesticks. You don't see the annotation, but you'll just have to trust me on this. No matter what time frame the chart is, the candlestick shapes mean the same thing pretty much. We will be talking more in depth about the candlestick shapes and what they mean in some more price action videos and presentations. However, in this one, it's just important to note that, in fact, candlesticks take on different shapes. You'll notice that there's a candlestick that has a medium length shadows and no real body. You see it annotated on the chart to the left. That particular type of candlestick is called a doji. The reason it has no body is because the opening price is exactly the same thing as the closing price. It has no color because there was no price shift in terms of direction. The opening price, again, was the same as the closing price. Next to that, you see a long blue candlestick. It has a very long real body and only one long shadow. It's actually kind of a medium-length shadow. Some people could call it a long shadow. Different people tend to have different interpretations. But it only has one shadow. That's because it opened up at a price, went down in price, or went up. It eventually hit a high price at around 16.12, as you see on the legend to the right. And then it ended up closing out the day down a little bit below 1607 or 1608. Actually, it closed out down there at 1607.75. Over toward the middle of the chart, up at the top, you'll see another long-bodied candlestick, a blue one, which indicates a downward trend, and it has two short shadows. And those two short shadows just means that it didn't trade very far outside of the opening or closing price, but at some point it did trade above the opening price, and it did trade below the closing price. So, you know, you might have just a body with no wicks or no shadows. You might have a body with a shadow on the top or a shadow on the bottom, or a body that has two shadows. The length of the body represents the time change. And that long-bodied candlestick up at the top with the two short shadows that I have annotated in red, you'll see that there was a price difference. It opened up at about 1613.75, and it dropped down to 1611. So that entire real body was the difference between the opening and close. And a couple candlesticks over to the right of that candlestick, you'll see a little green candlestick with no annotation next to it. It has a very small body. The difference between its opening price and closing price was only about a half a point. Again, the shapes of the candlestick indicate market behavior and price action behavior, and we'll talk more in depth about the various shapes such as dojis and hammers and gravestones and things like that in some of the other videos. This one, we just want you to know what the candlestick is and that they do take on various shapes, and sometimes some of the components are missing. Not all candlesticks have two wicks or two shadows. Some of them have none. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video on Candlesticks Basics, and remember to ride the range of change, because you are, after all, a Delta trader.